Hey nerds, David and I will review our top 5 moments from the second episode of House of the Dragon, Season 3, starting now. Welcome back to the Nerd Social. I am Colin.
And I'm David.
Before we start, chapter times are below if you want to skip ahead, and remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, please check out our website, thenerdsocial.org, for more reviews and analysis from our contributors. So, this second episode is titled Queen's Landing, and is written by Sara Hess, and is directed by Clare Kilner. The spoiler-free logline of this episode is, as Alicent risks everything to fulfill her end of the bargain, Rhaenyra must decide whether the Iron Throne is worth the cost. So, David, what are your spoiler-free thoughts about this second episode?
This is by far my favorite episode throughout this whole series because of Emma Darcy's performance. Rhaenyra has to deal with a lot of outcomes that's not going her way from bowing for the Iron Throne. Rhaenyra wanted this war to happen, but now it is happening. She has to live with the cost and the consequences.
I agree, David. If there's any doubt that Emma Darcy should not deserve any award consideration, then people need to get their heads checked. Really raved about her performance ever since last season. In this episode, they made you feel the raw emotions Rhaenyra is going through after what happened in last week's episode. It was very profound, as well as their emotions at the end of the episode, which we'll get to. So even now, after 24 hours or so, the emotions from that episode really reverberated with me. So, what is your rating for this episode?
I give it 10 out of 10, a theater rental. And because of Emma Darcy's performance, the pace of this episode gets straight to it.
I'm also going to give it a 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10. I think that the emotional stakes of this episode were very high. The ending of this episode was a shocker, particularly for two of our main characters, which we'll get to. There are definitely other storylines that they tied in, Aegon and Larys, Rhaenyra with Lady Aaron, and also Corlys, which we'll talk about as well, that are somewhat addressed. But the focus of this episode was all about Rhaenyra, as it should be, because she's the main character. Rhaenyra has to keep being the driving force of this series, because it doesn't work without her. As we review our top 5 moments, there are spoilers ahead for House of the Dragon Season 3, Episode 2, so get ready for that right now. Okay. So we start off with David's number 5, and David, you can describe the scene here.
Alright, King's Landing under Alicent's rule has fallen, which led to a shocking conversation in the throne room where Rhaenyra beheaded Alicent's father. Alicent has been trying desperately to keep her family in power of the Iron Throne, but now it's collapsing. Even with the advice and guidance from her father, Otto Hightower, they totally underestimated Rhaenyra's power.
I think that this scene is really compelling because what is it going through her mind now? Seeing that her father is now dead at the hands of her childhood friend Rhaenyra, and just back and forth between Alicent and Rhaenyra over 3 seasons so far. How is she going to react now? She basically gave power to Rhaenyra, and this is how she repays her. So we'll see what happens. I'm very intrigued by this moment here. For my number 5, it's Corlys is alive. So we saw this in the previews of episode 2. This was briefly addressed in this episode because he had a very outsized role in the last episode, but I'm glad that the writers and producers got to the point, addressed it, and moved the story along, because Corlys is a secondary character. They were right to give him his moment in episode 1, but this episode is definitely not his to carry. So, David, what is your number 4?
This is a scene where Rhaenyra discovers Jace. She lost one son already. Now she lost another, who she declared that he will be the heir. And he sees his leadership, his strength, and all the things that she cannot have, despite that she's a woman.
This scene for me was definitely higher on my list, but I think that you did bring up a couple of good points in terms of the breakout performance, but also just the raw emotion that comes along with it. My number 4 is actually what's going to happen with Aegon and Larys. They are also briefly addressed in this episode and the last episode. Now, I'm not sure where they're going to go with this right now, but hopefully we'll get a fuller picture of what they're going to do later on in the season, because the storyline kind of reminds me a little bit of when Sansa went on exile from King's Landing, with Larys actually playing the Littlefinger role and Aegon playing the Sansa role right now. It's not a one-to-one parallel, but it reminds me a little bit of that. I mentioned in the previous review that he ratted him out. It's like, why do you rat him out like that? But maybe it was because Larys was thinking in his head, if I don't rat him out, he's going to die anyway. So it was counterintuitive thinking of keeping him alive so that he can reclaim the throne, because he's in a very weakened state due to his injuries at the hands of his brother. So, David, what is your number 3? Because this number 3 is the same as my number 3. Let me hear your thoughts about Aemon here.
This is like a mirror of what Daemon did in the previous season of taking over Harrenhal. He ended up killing Sir Simon Strong and his sons before he actually met with Ellis Rivers. You're wondering, what's going on here? Because Aemon, he's always in for the killing. What made him not kill Ellis Rivers?
Yeah, I think she put a spell on him. So there's definitely some parallels, like you said, David, about Aemon and Daemon. I see that Aemon is definitely more of the sadistic type because he's younger and he doesn't have much of that life experience, where Daemon has seen it all. And there's a type of restraint that he has because he wants power too. It would be very interesting to see what the relationship it would be with Alice Rivers and Aemon, because I don't think he's dead, because it looks as though he was dead, but I don't think he is going to die. That would be a very lame way for him to die. Alice is pretty salty because Alice was talking to Daemon about getting Harrenhal, and Daemon said to Alice, you're not nobility, so why should you deserve Harrenhal? So there might be a revenge factor that come into play, and that Alice might use Aemon in that sense. David, what is number 2 on your list?
Number 2 on my list is where Rhaenyra takes the Iron Throne. She's really feeling the weight and the consequences of this war. Even though she did not start this war, but she had no choice. In her eyes, she's suffering still. She lost 2 of her sons. At the same time, that the emotions of anger and frustration of what more can she have to do, and also scared of what's going to happen to her next. Now she's sitting on the Iron Throne.
I don't think it's scared. I think it's a loss of herself, because she needs to gain the power in order to gain the favor of the masses at King's Landing and throughout Westeros. If you're in power, you almost have to lose a sense of yourself to gain that power. And she definitely feels that weight, but that's the price that she has to pay. And I mentioned in the last review that I did, what is the price that she's willing to pay to sit on here? And she was willing to pay a very high price. We'll get back to number 1 here, which was David's number 4. I agree with you, David, that Emma Darcy's performance is amazing. The raw emotion, and also with her on the Iron Throne and walking up in Otto's blood, I think that was really well done. And you feel it. You feel it in your heart, you feel it in your soul that she had to sacrifice so much. Having the writers made that choice of not having her grieve so long and having to bury her emotions was actually a very good choice in order to move the story along. So, David, what is your number 1 moment from this episode?
My number 1 is when Rhaenyra executes Otto Hightower. Now, it was a tie between she sit on the Iron Throne or execute Otto. The reason why I put execute Otto in number 1, because this is the first test as queen of taking over the Iron Throne. She is experiencing the weight of the actions of this war and what she must do now. Even Daemon said to her, you have to show them you're ruthless, that way no one can take advantage of you. She somehow reminded herself that this is the same man that tried to destroy her family. She lost her son because of him. She lost a lot of family and friends because of him. And at the same time, she must show that she's strong, even though it's not the way she wanted, but it must be done. That's why she had a hard time holding the sword. And when she hit him first hand, it's not strong enough. But then she released the anger and sadness at the same time into that sword. Boom. That's when it cut. See that Rhaenyra is starting to lose herself.
And I think that's a very good lesson for a lot of people out there to understand, is that there's a price to pay when you try to gain power or influence, especially in a very high position like that. So, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
After Alicent seeing Rhaenyra killed her father, the way that she looked at Rhaenyra sitting on the Iron Throne makes, as you said before, does she have the strength to forgive her, or she's gonna start feeling something different towards Rhaenyra?
It's very interesting to see the progression of their relationship throughout these 3 seasons. And it's at the core of what this whole series is about, the Alicent and Rhaenyra relationship. So those are our top 5 moments from House of Dragon Season 3, Episode 2. Tell us what your favorite moments were from this episode by commenting down below. Like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. And we will see you in this video. All right. Take care, everybody.